All right, hello. My name is Alec, and I will be refuting the speech by Kyle Hansen. I will be refuting the claim that the Electoral College has a negative effect on the presidential election process in the United States. My opponent provided three secondary claims, the first one being that the concept of one man, one vote does not apply in a presidential election due to the Electoral College. The second secondary claim that he provided was that the Electoral College encourages more attention and focus by campaigners in swing states while disregarding the rest of the country. The third secondary claim that was made is the Electoral College discourages voter turnout and participation, causing unequal political influence. In response to the first secondary claim, the advocate claimed that the concept of one man, one vote does not apply in a presidential election due to the Electoral College. However, I will be providing a counterclaim that states the concept of one man, one vote does in fact apply in the presidential election. The United States is a representative democracy, which means citizens are supposed to vote and elect representatives that will make decisions based on the fact that the majority vote, or one man, one vote, put them in that position. According to learnandc.org, the United States was intended as a republic in which the people would govern themselves only through elected representatives. According to archives.gov, the people who decide the electors who cast electoral votes are the committees of senators and congressmen who were elected under the concept of one man, one vote. Because this concept determined the representatives who are part of committees who determine the electors, one man, one vote still technically applies to the presidential election. So we can see that the United States is indeed a representative democracy, and the concept of one man, one vote does apply because you vote for the representatives who will in turn select the electors who will cast the electoral votes. Now, this may be more complex. This may be a more complex way, but nonetheless, the concept still applies to the presidential election. While the advocate never explained why this is directly negative towards presidential elections, the complexity and dilution of a voter's voice is definitely a negative attribute of a democratic republic. However, it is simply a fact of American policy. Secondly, the second secondary claim is that the Electoral College encourages more attention and focus in swing states while disregarding the rest of the country. I believe that the advocate did not provide substantial evidence to prove this claim, and here's why. The advocate simply listed swing states without providing statistical evidence about how campaigns become more focused in these states. It is difficult to prove that more attention is being given to campaigns that exist in these swing states without actually providing statistical evidence regarding campaign funding or media airtime. The advocate fails to provide, the advocate generalizes that more attention is being given based on the incentive that winning a state could determine the outcome of an election. Yes, a few states could determine the outcome of an election, but without examples of this occurring throughout presidential elections, you cannot make the inference that presidential campaigns are focused in swing states because of the incentive of winning the state determining the outcome of an election. Later in this claim, Kyle stated that the focus of campaigns is not on safe states such as California, New York, and Texas. While it is widely acknowledged that California, New York, and Texas are considered to be safe states in a presidential election, no data on campaign focus is provided to support this subclaim that these states receive less campaigning. In conclusion to this challenge to this evidence, the concept behind the reasoning was sound. However, without any evidence or instances of this occurring being provided, you cannot assume this into the main claim, and you cannot identify how campaigns in swing states negatively draw attention away from the rest of the country. In response to the third secondary claim, the advocate talks about how the Electoral College discourages voter turnout and participation, causing unequal political influence. I believe a generalization was made about voters being discouraged to turn out, causing unequal political influence. The advocate's evidence to support this claim was that voters will be discouraged to show up and actually vote because the electoral system is a winner-takes-all system. The advocate stated that minority party voters are discouraged because their party won't win in the state they reside in, because majority vote wins the electoral vote. The only evidence is a generalization that minority voters feel as if their state has preemptively decided who will receive that state's electoral vote. This undermines the claim because there is a lack of substantial evidence that would prove voters feel discouraged by the winner-takes-all system. There is only the assumption that they are being discouraged. Kyle also claimed that political party domination causes unequal political influence because voters of a minority feel as if they won't win the electoral vote if the state or in the state either way. The advocate made another generalization that minority voters feel as if party domination will cause their candidate to lose the electoral vote in their state. No evidence of this occurring was provided. While the advocate restated that media focuses their attention on swing states, he did not directly provide evidence that minority voters are subjected to unequal political influence. This undermines the claim because there is a lack of substantial evidence correlating party domination in states to voter misrepresentation and therefore unequal political influence. In conclusion, I feel that Kyle's speech brings up an important issue regarding how the complexity of the Electoral College has a negative effect on the United States. However, the evidence provided was not sufficient enough to convince me of any factual proof that negative effects come from the Electoral College. Thank you.
All right, the structure's clear. On the first point, you've got an interesting counterclaim that suggests that because the electors are chosen by representatives, therefore it is really still a one-man, one-vote sort of thing. That seems an interesting interpretation of the idea. I do think you need to document that the electors are in fact chosen by the elected representatives. I'm not exactly sure what the process is for that, and you don't really have any evidence to document those particular points. And that becomes a kind of a ringing claim throughout the rest of your argument that there's an absence of evidence. Most of your argument consists of a challenge for evidence from the advocate without necessarily providing any reason why we should doubt what the advocate said. If intuitively what the advocate said seems to be based on sound premises, and they provided at least some evidence on these particular points, then I think it's incumbent on you to give us a reason to believe the opposite. The presses for evidence are okay, but it feels like an argument that could have come up, immediately afterwards. You could have made 90% of the argument that you're making on the second and the third point right afterwards without doing any additional research on the subject. I just think that you need to do something that's a little bit more engaging on some of those arguments. And you're also complicating some of these points, kind of repeating the same idea internally on some of these notions. If you had a counterexample in a couple of spots, that would, I think, change the attitude entirely, and then it would, in fact, shift the burden of proof. I think that there's this concept here that you think, well, there's a standard that they haven't met, and I need you to give me a reason why they haven't met it, as well as just a challenge to say, there's a lack of evidence on those particular points. Delivery is problematic. There's a lot of reading, and there's a little bit of drop-off at the end of the speech, sort of like you're getting tired of it. All right, thank you.